Okay, so I've got Dr. Claire Fozard here with me, who is currently at the Hull York Medical School as a portfolio fellow with the Academic Primary Care Department. She's just going to tell us a little story about how she became involved in a portfolio career. So Claire, could you tell us, to start with, what's your experience of using knowledge work?
Well, I suppose in my current role, which, as you've just said, I'm working as a portfolio fellow, which means essentially I'm still working clinically as a GP for half the week, and that's at a practice in Hull. And then for the other half of the week, I'll be working within the team at the Academy of Primary Care, and I suppose developing on lots of skills and knowledge that I've sort of gained over the last I suppose 10 years really, even stemming from when I was at medical school, and looking how we apply a lot of that into practice. And so currently the role has offered me opportunity to help deliver a module which is specifically about quality improvement in primary care, and that's something that in the last 2 or 3 years I've become really interested in, and that's for a program called the Catalyst program. And in the region, that's just been piloted in this last year and a half for new to practice GPs. And so the specific module I've been helping to deliver is helping to, I suppose, describe what QI is, and also then support also the participants on the programme to then undergo a quality improvement project themselves, which is part of the programme. So yeah, it's been a really great opportunity, and there's lots of other parts to my role as well, where I've also had opportunities from a QI perspective to offer support at a regional level, so to the wider team of healthcare professionals in primary care. So that's included GP trainers and GP trainees, and also parts of other sort of primary care members, team members as well. And then of course, because you're attached to the medical school, I've also had a role in supporting medical students, and with again supporting them learning about QI. So that's been a really great experience too.
Super. And so what led you to be getting involved with quality improvement in this way?
So yeah, it's really great to sort of have this moment to sort of reflect on how you sort of get to this stage, because I think you never sort of design it, you never know what's around the corner necessarily. And so I think even thinking back to when I was at medical school, I always had a sort of natural interest to teach, and found it really fascinating that actually it is part of our duties of a doctor to be teaching and imparting knowledge at all stages of our career really. And so one of the special study modules that struck a chord with me was actually going into high schools and doing part of a widening participation scheme. And so that was actually teaching more on a sort of biology sort of level, but also supporting them with the idea of higher education opportunities in higher education. So from there, I think doors opened, because I then went on to study intercalated BSc in medical education. So this was all part of my undergraduate training. And with that, as I became a foundation doctor, I wanted to continue to develop on a lot of those different skills and the knowledge work that I got from that intercalated degree around teaching, learning, assessing, and also all the other parts to it, which is sort of the policy and practice and the leadership and management side of things. And I suppose that's where I've gone on to then find a bit more of a specialist interest in leadership. So I've completed a master's in medical leadership over 5 years, which was a little bit of a balance throughout GP training. Actually, it started, I think, just after foundation program. So it was great to have the flexibility that it was over 5 years. But of course, I had to sort of be quite creative with how I used opportunities to actually gain that master's. But yeah, and then I suppose the next thing I know, an opportunity came up at the Academy of Primary Care, and it's great because all the things I learned around medical leadership led me to realise that, but what about the practical side of it? And for me, that was just the shouting, QI was the bit shouting out at me there, because that's how we apply a lot of what we learn around sort of leadership and change. And actually, how do we do it? Well, there's a huge amount to learn around quality improvement.
Fantastic. That's such an interesting journey that you've taken. I wondered, could you tell us some of the pros and cons of your current role?
Yeah, so definitely the pros are that I feel there's a really nice balance. We all know that there's a huge amount of demand in our clinical roles as doctors in any field, and particularly in GP practice where they're very long days, and you've got a lot of time, almost a lot of time on by yourself, and you do have your teams close by, but we are um, challenged really at the moment, and I found that having this break where I can sort of tune in a completely different way and have a different, I suppose, time in terms of just headspace and how we learn to support one another and actually learn to make our patient care of a better standard. And actually sometimes you don't have that space when you're working clinically. So I've found that that's been a real advantage, having this balance and having this bit more flexibility around the working week. And I think with that as well, there's something to say about the positive impact you can get from the things that you learn in both roles and how they sort of impact both roles. And I'd say probably more so from how I've been working as a portfolio fellow with the academy and my experiences doing the masters. Then you have a bit more time to almost become a bit more self-aware, have time to reflect a bit more, and I think that impacts really positively on how you are as a clinician.
And are there any bad sides?
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned about the cons, but of course, it's a challenge in itself balancing things. So balancing time, your workload, and I think the way, and I won't say it's always a constant uh, effort that you have to sort of think, okay, sometimes you have to stop and check in and reevaluate what you're doing with your time and where you're putting your energy. So for me, what's helped to do that is having some good mentorship or coaching where you can get that support, where you can bounce off someone, and yeah, I suppose just have that moment to reprioritize. And I think another challenge I've had even from the early days, because I do remember in foundation programs, sort of you have your sort of allocated supervisors, and they were a bit frowny about what I wanted to do and why was I interested in medical education at that stage. But actually sometimes it's just not feeling too disheartened if you perhaps get a supervisor or a mentor or someone who maybe doesn't necessarily see the value in what you want, your additional interests. Don't worry about that, because there'll be someone else. And I think what I've learned is always find that someone else. So yeah.
And so what tips would you give to any GP out there at the moment who wanted to get involved in quality improvement as their sort of specialist interest?
So yeah, I think first of all, don't feel overwhelmed, because I know quality improvement is becoming a much more a wider conversation now. It's very much part of curricula at lots of stages, which is great to see. Undergraduate, part of specialist training, part of even our ongoing sort of professional development. But sometimes I think what I've learned, even in the last few months when I've been supporting people learning about it, that people feel a bit like, oh, where do you start? Or, and I think actually just take it in small chunks, appreciate that it's a huge evolving and quite new, part of the way we work in healthcare, and sort of appreciate that you can sort of be quite open with how you experience it. There's no one set way. And I think if you do have an interest but not sure which way to turn, then certainly talking in your clinical teams. But then if you've got an interest to take it further or not want to learn a bit more from an academic point of view, then I think it's always an open door, any type of university or medical school department. So just have the conversations is what I encourage. And I think there's lots of people out there who want to help support one another, and that's exactly what I'm experiencing at the moment. So I just say if it's something that's really striking you, and there's something that you're really inquisitive and curious about, then just go for it and see what happens.
Super. Thank you so much for spending the time to talk to us. It's been really interesting.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.